Hello and welcome to QTV. I am Babakar Sise and thank you very much for joining us. This program we are coming to have now is brought to you by International Republican Institute, IRI, and is funded by United States Agency for International Development, USAID. The topic for discussion today is public opinion poll on the constitutional review process and the draft constitution. The program will highlight Gambians' view on the 2019 draft constitution and the much talk about 2020 draft constitution. The opinion poll was based on the 2019 constitution because it was done last year between November and December, during the time the CRC released the first draft. Today's program will also answer questions about the content of the 2020 draft constitution that was released by the CRC in March this year. In the program, I have the pleasure to invite Seth Mati Jau, who is working at the Center for Research and Policy Development. Seth Mati, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And Maria Sen, Law Hub, the Gambia.
Thank you.
Maria, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'll begin with Seth Mati. You work for the Center for Research and Policy Development. Obviously, you are the one who conducted this research on behalf of International Republican Institute, IRI. If we speak about opinion polls, what is an opinion poll in the first place?
Thank you very much for having me here. And you're right, the Center for Research and Policy Development did the study on behalf of the International Republican Institute between 26 November to 7 December 2019. And this was exactly when the first draft constitution was released and for people to start having their views and exchanges. So an opinion poll is basically a survey to measure people's opinion, to basically ask people what they think about a particular issue and then measure that and aggregate that. And that's what we basically did with this survey also. We went around the country asking people their views about the Constitution, allowing them also to be part of the process and also have a say within the process. So basically we measure people's opinion, what they say, what they think, their perceptions, and then present that.
So basically, it's like when the CRC went on a public consultation tour. So you also went on the same kind of thing to gauge people's opinion about the draft constitution.
Yes, but for us it's different because we use a scientific method, which was a face-to-face interview. We basically sampled the population, and then from there we have teams of 6 researchers, enumerators that went around the country nationwide to meet people between 18, those that were above 18 years and older, because we are looking at the opinions.
Voter age?
Yes, voter age or the adult population. So unlike the CRC, which organizes more around public consultations and even they also did surveys, but for us it was more based on a scientific method, trying to sample the whole population and through that have face-to-face of those 18 and above.
Okay, but opinion polls, why do organizations do them? Why do you do it? What is the importance?
Like I said before, the importance of opinion poll is basically to try to understand what people are thinking or what people are saying about a particular issue. And so what we did here was basically to measure people's opinion about the draft constitution and some other issues, but then more about the draft constitution basically.
Okay, that's important. So what method do you use? I know you said face-to-face interview. Was that the only thing you used?
No. So when we are conducting the surveys, usually we work with the Gambia Bureau of Statistics because they are the body responsible for government surveys and others. And so with GBOS, they have a frame where they call the 2013 census survey. They have already grouped the country into different areas. And so what we did, they helped us did the sampling of 1,200. And so what we did with that, we went with the team into the ground based on the questionnaires already that was set. And then we went into the communities based on certain arrangements. We randomly select people in these different communities. And usually when we are selecting respondents, the only thing that we cater for is that the person is 18 years and above, and also we change between, you know, if an interviewer interview a woman here, the next interview must be a male respondent. So we try to ensure that there's a gender, you know, proper gender representation on that. And also when it comes to the sampling, also our methodology was based on a proportionate to the size of the population. So areas where there were more people, there's a high likelihood that we interviewed more people from that area. For instance, West Coast region has more population compared to many of the other regions. So usually we tend to select more people there, just so to ensure that those that are selected for the surveys are representative of the wider population within that. So and so when we meet the individual, what we did is just to administer the questionnaire, do a face-to-face interview, and basically that's what we did. And so in total we interviewed 1,178 respondents, even though our initial target was 1,200, and so overall we had a 98% response rate. And so our confidence level is that about 95% of all the answers that we get, we are confident that it is representative of the views of the public.
And you did that in local languages?
Yes, we translated the questionnaire into the 4 main local languages in the Gambia: Mandinka, Fula, Wolof, and Jola. Because also during the training we also take the enumerators through, you know, agreeing with these various local language interpretation to ensure that there is a uniformity in administering the question, because sometimes one word may mean, you know, different things. So we try to also to ensure that that part is clear to all the enumerators. Yeah.
And during the opinion poll, what are some of the things that stand out during your research?
Yes, with regards to the key findings, if that's what you're asking, or if you're asking about the you know, some of the challenges that you face. Sometimes you go into the communities and they feel it's a government that sends you, or people are not even, you know, sometimes they don't want to talk. But for this case, with regards to the constitution, we had a lot of people that wanted to talk, because at that point also the constitutional process was, you know, everybody was aware of the constitutional process, or may I say many people were aware of the constitutional process because of the good work that the CRC did. So yeah, but in terms of the key findings of the survey, we realized that generally Gambians want term limits in the new constitution, and secondly, we also see that Gambians prefer Barrow to current term to be included in the constitution. We also have people asking for you know, asking for basically, yeah, we also have people that want
citizenship,
citizenship issues to be added. We also have people that majority of Gambians also want the country to be a secular, meaning that the government needs to be neutral on the issues of religion.
Death penalty.
Yes. So, but we didn't ask issue of death penalty. We did not did not go into that in detail. But generally, the country or the people want a democratic system, and basically that's what the results of the survey shows in a nutshell.
Yeah, okay, it's important because you conducted the survey, so you know about these things. That's why I spent more time on you to explain to us how it happened. And of course, Maria, you are not left out. And now we'll go to the 2020 draft constitution. And there's a lot of things, especially, let's start with secularism. It's a big topic. People have, in fact, now it's a bit winding down. But there was a time it has escalated a lot, and people are talking about people were talking about it a lot. But the question I want to ask you is, what does the draft constitution say about the right to religion?
The right to religion is sufficiently provided for in the draft constitution. And if you look at section 49, for instance, it gives everybody the right to practice and manifest their own religion and belief, either in private or public, and no one should be, for instance, barred from manifesting or practicing their belief or religion. So that is sufficiently provided for under Section 49 of the draft Constitution. And with regards to the debate on secularism, I must say I was one of the people that really wanted the word secularism to be inserted in the draft Constitution. But also, I think, given the debate that happened about this secularism, it ended up being dragged into a religious debate. I know there are different definitions of secularism, but in the Gambia here, it was mainly about religion, which I think was a misconception. But at the end of the day, the CRC was able to draw a line and to avoid unnecessary conflict. So if you look at what composes or what makes up a secular state, although they failed to insert the word secular, but they've, in different provisions of the draft constitution, sufficiently provide for what really constitutes a secular state. For instance, the sufficient provision of the right of religion to be practiced by people either in private or public is sufficiently provided for. And if you look at the state, it doesn't in any way build the state to favor one particular religion or the other, but the Gambian people in general as a sovereign republic.
So the inclusion of secularism in the draft constitution and the exclusion, what is the difference?
For me, at this point, looking at what the draft contains,
it's not there right now.
It's not there right now, but it is sufficiently provided for, although the word is not included. I think the problem that we have, or that we had during that time, is most people didn't know that the word secular was illegally inserted into the constitution. If you look at the case of Kemeseng Jame versus the state, where the Supreme Court said that Section 1.1 of the Constitution is null and void and shouldn't have been there. In fact, they ordered the National Assembly to remove the word, but it wasn't. So most people thought that the Gambia was a secular state at that point. But what the CRC did was they just reflected the initial position of all the previous constitutions that we've had, which never included the word constitution. But also, during their consultation process, I don't know what the opinion poll says, but if you look at the report of the CRC, most of the people in the Gambia didn't want secularism to be included because of one reason or the other, based on religious debate. But they've done a fair job in accommodating fundamental human rights, especially the right to religion, which was the framework of the whole debate on secularism provided for in the Constitution.
Okay.
So whether it's there or not right now, I wish it was there, but
it's not.
But it's not.
But you said it's well defined.
Yeah, it's not.
And coming to you, what did the opinions polls say about the right of religion?
Yeah, just like Maria stated, and even the CRC found, majority of Gambians, about 73% of those that were polled, said that they want the government to be neutral when it comes to the issues of religion.
73%?
Yeah, about 73% of the population. But this is not the first time. Even the previous Afrobarometer surveys also shows that majority of Gambians prefer to live in a secular state, and basically that's what this 2019 IRI survey also shows.
Okay, and Maria, the right to religion is different from secularism.
If you look at secularism, although there are different definitions, but I will look at it as a complete separation between state and the church, or the church and the state. What that means is the government should not take a stance in which religion it should represent, and at the same time it should stay away from religious affairs in the country. So that is what secularism entails. But given our current context, it's very difficult to make that difference because of the religious debates that come into it.
And to add on to that, the interesting part also is the nature of the debate, because if secular was basically anti-religion, as some alluded to, or if secular was basically something different, then why are we having a very intense debate between the Christian community and the Muslim community? I was thinking maybe both of these communities will stood against that. But then if you look at the nature of the debate, because at some point, of course, on the side of the Muslim communities that say they did not want secular to be added, they are looking at it from the fact that maybe secular could promote the issue of homosexuality and other, because that's the argument. But while the others are looking at it, the inclusion of the word, so that for their own protection, because of what happened in 2015. So there's that fear from both sides. But at the end of the day, I think the CRC did a good job in trying to compromise between these two different camps, and that's what we've seen with this draft constitution. But generally, people want the state to be neutral when it comes to religion, meaning that they don't want one particular religion to be the religion of the state.
You mentioned about promoting gay rights. I will come to Maria about that. Like, some people think if secularism is included in our constitution, that means we are legalizing gay marriage. Is it the same thing? Because I've had a lot of people talking about that.
No. It doesn't mean that at all. It's completely different. Like I said, secularism puts a clear distinction between the functions of the state from religious matters. It doesn't in any way or form say homosexuality or gay rights is legal in the Gambia. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just separates the state from religious affairs.
So the state should be involved?
Yes.
So who should be involved? For example, if we have, we have the Christian Council and we have the our Muslim
what it does
Islamic Council, so they should be in charge of.
Yeah, what it does is basically what Section 49 of the Constitution says. Everyone has the right to practice and manifest their own religion or beliefs, even in private or in public, and that to a larger extent even involves culture as well. Okay,
and if someone comes, I want to know this. If you come from another country with another religion or a new religion into the Gambia, do you have to register the religion? Is there any way, or you just have to go ahead and practice your religion?
There's nothing like registration of religion, no. There's nothing like that. I don't think I've heard of that
So you just
anywhere.
can go into any country as long as you go there legal and then start practicing your religion?
I mean, I think if we have to answer that, given our own context, I think majority of us, in fact, we're Muslims because we were born in Muslim households.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like having a Muslim certificate or registering to be a Muslim.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. From that, anyway, we'll go into citizenship. Okay, it was widely discussed during the CRC because I was following it. Again, opinion polls. What do you say about it? Because sometimes, for example, if if a child is born to non-Gambians who live in Gambia here, what happens about the child? How can the child be a citizen? So first, anyway, tell us about what the opinion poll says about citizenship.
What Gambians say is that anyone that is born in the country, based on the poll, they should have the right to be Gambian. That's what we ask, basically, whether people agree or disagree that people or children born in Gambia should be Gambian citizens, and almost about 80% of the respondents agree with that question.
So it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, so
anybody born in the Gambia should be a Gambian citizen.
So basically, I think that's the most logical thing that many people decided to go with. Yeah.
So even children born to non-Gambians,
as long as you are born in Gambia, that's what we ask, whether they agree or disagree, whether people that are born in Gambia, even just that born in Gambia, whether they should be Gambian citizens or otherwise. And so majority responded that they want those people that are born in Gambia to be designated as Gambian citizens.
So means your survey tallies with the CRC.
Well, even in the CRC report, it suggests that a lot of Gambians wanted, citizen by birth. But then I think based on certain technicalities, I think.
So will tell us about that.
So they decided not to add that. It's not everything that people wanted also was added to the constitution, I think. And I think maybe Maria can.
Maria, yes. What was the constitution say about that?
Okay, if you look at the report of the CRC, I think what it is saying is, they don't want automatic citizenship because of the resources, given the context of the Gambia, the economic situation. We don't have the powerhouse that the United States has or the United Kingdom has, so we are not able to do that. But what it has provided for is that any person who is born of Gambian parents, whether in the Gambia or outside of the Gambia, will still be able to be a Gambian at that point. So it has merged, like in the 1997 Constitution, we had citizenship by descent and citizenship by birth. But then the draft Constitution, rather, doesn't provide for both. All it has is citizenship by birth, whether in the Gambia or outside of the Gambia, so long as at the time of your birth, one of your parents or even your grandparents was or is a Gambian at that time, you will be able to be a Gambian. but automatic citizenship is not granted.
So if two foreigners come to this country and they have a child,
yes, and none of them,
none of them,
one of them has to be a Gambian.
Okay.
Yeah, one of them has to be or your grandparents.
The husband or the wife has to be, one of them has to be a Gambian.
Yeah, or
and then
your
in that case, the child will be a Gambian as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's clear enough. Okay. From citizenship, we'll go to presidential term limits. This is another big issue that was discussed. But I will start with you about the opinion polls again about presidential term limits, especially with Barrow's, make a reference to Barrow at the moment.
For us, we ask people whether they agree or disagree whether the new constitution should add provisions to ensure that there is 2 term limits for the president. And about 88% of the population agree with that. And this is also in line with what the Constitutional Review Commission have also experienced during their consultation as well. So the findings of our of the survey is also in line with that constitution. So basically, we went further to ask also whether the current term of President Barrow should be included, or the current term should be included as part of the 2-year term. And so 66% of the population also responded in the positive, that they want this current term to be added into the draft constitution. And for me, I feel one reason why that is the case, because most Gambians are also aware of what has happened when it comes to the issues of term limits in Africa, where we've seen many
30 years, 35 years.
Yes, 35, 30 years. But also we have seen also attempts at in many instances where people try to change the presidential term limits to favor them. And even currently, as we're discussing, the issue of Guinea-Conakry is about that. And we have also seen that in Senegal. But generally, like I keep saying, Gambians, prefer democracy. They want democratic system, and they feel also that term limit is essential part of that democratic process.
Okay, and I'll come to Maria to give us, what did the draft constitution say about presidential term limit at the moment?
I think that's one of the key and novel provisions when it comes to Gambian constitutionalism in the country, like constitutionalism in the country. For the first time, there's been an introduction of a 2-term limit. And with regards to the term limits of the current president, it's in black and white. If you look at Schedule 4, Section 5, it says the current term of the president will be included as will be part of the 2-term limit that the Constitution provides for, meaning that the term that he has served already will be one of the 2-term limits that is already provided for in the Constitution. Now the question or the debate that is whether that is retrospective or not, is that something against the president on his right to be voted for? There are 2 angles to this. If I have to look at it from a personal perspective, like given the current situation and learning from other jurisdictions as well, that is one perspective. And also there's another perspective on the law, which is not what people say it is, but what really the law is. And in terms of that, a law should not be retrospective. We have a case law on that in the country. That is, I think, the Sabali versus the state case in 2000 or 2001, where Indemnity Act was passed retrospectively against Sabali. And looking at our jurisdiction, that is not really supposed to happen. But we're in a situation where we're trying not to put the country in a position where other countries have been in, like Sid has rightly said, in Guinea. And also, I think there has been a similar situation even in Senegal here in 2007 with, I think it was President Wada, where he wanted to go for another term. And we saw what happened in Senegal. We saw the violence that happened. And so yeah, looking at the law and the jurisdiction, a retrospective law is no law at all. But then right now, I don't want to put on that cap. I don't know if I should or if I should not, but I think the president should just leave after 2 terms as the Constitution has provided for. That is what I will vote for, just like most Gambians have voted for in the poll, and also based on the inspiration that the CRC got during their public consultation, where a majority of the Gambians said that his current term should be included as one of the 2 terms.
Okay, but right now, there is no referendum.
Yeah.
The referendum did not take place. Are we using the draft constitution as law right now? Because, for example, it's not in effect at the moment.
At the moment, it's not.
Yes.
It's a bill, actually. It's not even a draft constitution, it's a bill.
Okay.
Until it becomes a law.
Yes.
So where we are at this point is that the Ministry of Justice has announced that they have gazetted it.
Yes.
So it has to be presented at the National Assembly. Now, as to the question of when the referendum will hold, I don't know.
Yes, because if it happens in 2021, of course, with this coronavirus, it's a big excuse for everybody to say it's corona, we are dealing with this and that, and probably there is no funds. But then, when the elections will happen in 2021, so what happens if the referendum happens after the elections?
Then that will defeat.
Because if it says 2-term limit, Barrow's term starts this, with this first 5 years, that means there will be a problem. Because it means it is counted even before the referendum or even before it comes into force or effect.
I think...
what do you think of that?
That is going to be an advantage to Barrow, but as Gambians, we don't want that. I think it would have been best if we had a referendum before the next presidential elections. But unfortunately, the first gazette was delayed. We don't know when the referendum will take place, and elections are coming up next year. Maybe the referendum will even be after the elections.
Exactly. So if that happens, what would happen? Because it will see, if it comes into effect, it will say 2-term limits, and then the first one there was no referendum. So, what do you think?
Well, I think if we, for me, I see 2 things. Either we pass the constitution if we get to the referendum, or don't pass it. And if we pass it, then we have a new constitution. If we don't pass it, then we stick to the 1997 constitution. So it means everything that we're doing would continue to be based on the 1997 constitution, because since this new bill has not been passed and made into a new constitution, so still we'll have to move with what is here. The country cannot go without any constitution. So what we're trying to do is to ensure that the gaps that existed within this new constitution is reformed, and so that we can have new progressive laws that are in line with our aspirations as a people, and that are in line also with our democratic feelings. And I think this is what we're agitating for. And so if you look at the high participation of the population when it comes to this Constitutional Review Commission, everybody majority agrees that we need a new constitution, because also they feel that the old constitution, and some have even argued that has been amended 52 times.
Many times.
And most of these amendments were undemocratic. So majority of Gambians feel, based on those amendments, based on the fact that those amendments were undemocratic, and even some call it the Jammeh Constitution, because they felt it was there more representing the interests of Jammeh. So that's the need, and that's the reason why many Gambians want a new constitution. And both in the surveys, and I also think the consultations that the CRC did, shows that high interest within the process. But now, where we are, the ball is in the court of the politician. Now we want to know whether they want to move forward, or they just want to stay with the thing that people are agitating and aspiring for it to be changed. So for me, I think that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, and one of the things that actually stand out with this bill is that I don't think we've had any constitution in the history of this country that actually represent what the people want. And for me, one of the things that I really use as an example is this debate on secularism.
Yeah.
If the CRC had their way, I think they would have included secular. But based on the debate and the majority contributions that came up, they tried to find a way of making the constitution about what people really want, and they excluded the word secularism. So I think with regards to the term limits, for me, it's the same logic. It is what people want. It is the people's constitution, and in a way, it safeguards and protects the Gambia in the next 5 or 10 years. If we want to say that we want to change one single provision in the constitution because of one person, then another person will say, look, I'm also a Gambian and I have a right, so you will have to change it. So we need to avoid situations like that. I mean, any person in this country, so long as you've met the requirements, has the right to vote and be voted for. It's not just one person. Any other person could say that as well. So I think we need to make good use of this opportunity and pass this constitution. Otherwise, we'll have to go back to the 1997 constitution, which will defeat the whole process of the transitional justice process that we've had over the years.
Because even the TRRC and most of these institutions are also trying to wait on what the new constitution will say also. Security sector reform, we are talking about the police, for instance, using the Police Act of 1952, still colonial, in the 50s, colonial laws. We're talking about the prison service, they still using colonial. So we need a new constitution to be able to move and maybe perhaps change some of these issues. But Maria was also highlighting an important aspect with regards to term limits, and we ask people also what are the motivating factors, things that will make them vote for a new constitution, and term limits. More than 60 or close to 60% of the respondents say term limits is one of the reasons that will make them vote. And happily, the draft constitution or the bill now has term limit as part of the constitution,
which is the
and at least that shows that people would be ready to vote for a new constitution if it gets to that stage.
Okay. Anyway, we'll see if there will be a referendum before 2021, or if there will be no referendum before 2021. We'll wait and hear from the people responsible to do that, and from the general public as well. From that one, we'll go to representation of marginalized groups, women, children, people with disability. Again, this is very important because these people are marginalized, and I think a lot is needed to do for them. Exactly. And then in that situation, again, in your opinion polls, what did the polls say about women, children, people with disability?
Majority Gambians generally agree that those people should be included in the governance process. They say women should, the representation of women should be increased. They even supported the quota for women to be added. And the issue of disability also, they feel young people and people living with disability needs to be part of the governance process. So generally, there are general agreement with regards to these different marginalized groups. People want those people also to be in front of the discussions and to be part of that. So generally, I think majority of Gambians want these people to be included in the process.
Okay, Maria, you will tell us what is in the constitution about women, children representation, and then people with disability. I know we have a vice president now. It's a woman. So most people say, but our vice president is a woman. So, but anyway, give us what the constitution says about it.
With regards to marginalized groups in the National Assembly, Schedule 3, I think, Schedule 3 makes provision for that. 14 women, 2 from each administrative area, and also two people with disabilities should also be represented in the National Assembly. But what the constitution, what the draft constitution rather, hasn't provided for is how that will be conducted. But I would like to believe that it will be based on the procedures set down by the National Assembly through an act of the National Assembly, or even the IBEC, the Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission, who will model down ways in which that will be conducted. Because we have different administrative areas or districts or regions rather in this country, and the number is just 14 for women. So maybe 2, like the Constitution says, 2 for each administrative area. And for the persons with disabilities, I understand there's a federation for that, so they will obviously nominate 2 people from that federation to represent the people with disabilities in the National Assembly.
So you said we have 14?
So 14 women, that is what the Constitution provides for.
The draft Constitution?
Yeah, the draft Constitution. 14 women, 2 from each administrative area, and 2 people with disabilities as well, to be represented in the National Assembly.
Okay, and
so I think the attempt here is just to ensure that we have more women representation in the National Assembly. But then the primary responsibility for that is also the political parties, whether they put women before, women candidates for elections. So if they don't do that, at least there's another way based on this administrative representation, where we'll have extra 14 women to be represented in parliament. But now I don't know. I think now in parliament we have about 5 or 6 women in parliament, and also in the local government areas you have very minimal women participation, low number of women councillors there. So for me, I think also the new constitution has learned from other countries, for instance, like Uganda, that have a very similar model where women are elected, from that regional basis. But like Maria said, I don't know whether it's going to be on partisan basis or whether it's going to be more on independent ticket. So that too we need to discuss further, I think.
I may have missed this, but I think somewhere in Schedule 3, I can't remember vividly, but I think it says something like the women with the highest vote will occupy the 14 positions in each of these administrative areas. So I think there's a way they will obviously model that. At the same time,
2 women will be selected
from each administrative
elected.
area. Yeah, from each administrative area.
And they will be and the people will vote for them.
No.
Or is the government
from each administrative area?
2.
There will be women running.
Yes.
And 2 will be elected from each.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, there will be 14 women in parliament.
Yes.
And it's the women with the highest number. So I don't know how that is going to play out, but I know the constitution also says that the National Assembly will make laws and procedures regarding this as well.
Okay. Yeah, but with the election also is mostly women. I'm thinking it should be contested only among women. By women. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to ensure that there are more women in the National Assembly. Yeah. If one aspect, if the partisan line doesn't work, because like this is just an additional provision. If the partisan line doesn't work, of course you have extra 14 women, elected among themselves to be from different regions, administrative regions, to be represented in parliament.
So it could be more because another woman.
Yes, it could be more because now we're seeing that political parties are instituting this internal democratic processes. Yes. And one of the challenges for women representation in this country has been based on culture or the poor finances, because elections and politics require money. But if the party doesn't support that much, I think women will prefer to spend the money in families, the money that they do not have in family related issues, than getting out there to do politics. Because at the end of the day, you have to measure that. And when it comes to the selection, usually we see that men are favored over women, and we have seen so many derogatory remarks thinking that women's role should be in the kitchen, but no, the women hold the other half of the sky, so they need to be part of the process. They need to come out there and engage in the political process. And I think this is what the new the draft constitution is trying to also emphasize, knowing also the controversial nature of this topic as well.
Yeah. Okay, but now that we are talking about women, what are people with disability? You did mention it again. For them, what is their representation?
2.
That's different from the 14.
Yeah, that's different from the 14 women.
2.
Yeah. So there's 14 women.
14 women from 7 administrative area. What about the 2? How would that be?
From the federation that they represent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Federation for Disabled Persons.
Yes.
We have it, yeah.
Yeah. I know there's a federation for that.
Yeah.
But it just says federation that which they represent. There's no mention. I know there's a federation, but there's no mention of their federation in the constitution.
Okay.
But of course, yeah.
And no mention of how that will be selected or elected as well.
No.
Okay.
But it just says 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Again, I'll stay with you for now. The draft constitution. How can an average Gambian access draft constitution at the moment? Like we know it's out. If you want, where is it?
If you have internet access, easily go to the CRC website. You can download the draft, the explanatory memorandum, and the report. If you're not able to go to the CRC website, of course you can go to Law Hub Gambia. It's lawhubgambia.com.
You also have it
we have everything there, yeah. The report, the explanatory memorandum, and the final draft constitution as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, we spoke about the referendum. We don't know when it will happen, but generally about when we are conducting this survey, tell us about some of the most difficult things you face, some of the most difficult challenges.
Well, like I said, usually with survey, depending on the topic, the sensitive nature of the topic, people will react based on that. But I think for us, luckily with this time, we did not face as many challenges as before. Sometimes you go to certain communities because you don't speak a particular language, or you have, those can be problematic. That's why we want to have a team. We usually have a team that are diverse, that's diversify, and also speaks all the different languages, especially the 4 major languages that we translate. But for this survey, we did not face many challenges because of my argument is because of the nature of the topic that we were asking people, because people
probably because the CRC had gone
already
aware
of the process and all that, and usually here now, based on the current dispensation, a lot of people want to have their say in the governance process, and that's why I kept saying we did not face many challenges as before. But usually with surveys, like I said, you go to certain communities and they might not want to talk to you based on the topic. So those are all realities that do exist as well.
Okay, Maria, looking at the Constitution, probably you've read a lot about it. I did not. What are some of the things that you want to be seen in the draft Constitution that are not there at the moment? Or what do you want omitted, for example, that is there right now?
I would have loved to see young people included. We have like 14 women, 2 disabled people as well. Young people representation, I think, should have been included, at least a minimum number for young people in the National Assembly.
Which is different from children's. We have the Minister of Women Affairs, we have children representative there at the moment.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the National Assembly.
You mean the National Assembly?
Yes, and there's a requirement, a minimum number for women to be allocated a seat in the National Assembly.
14,
and
2 for the disabled.
Yeah, I would have loved to see young people as well. Not just women and disabled people, but the young people as well. I would have loved to see them included. And also, I know this sounds like a broken record right now, but I would have loved to see the word secular in the Constitution. Yes, of course. I would have loved to see that. But overall, I think based on my areas of interest, which I've looked at in the draft Constitution so far, I think this is one of the best that we've had. It's very progressive. I like it. Novel provisions, especially the ones on local standi with regards to enforcement of fundamental human rights. It has broadened the local standard as well. I like the Constitution. It's really good. The introduction of social, economic, and
rights,
the cultural rights as well. It's good. I will definitely vote yes.
And you had the military. If you look at the news, you heard what they say.
Yeah.
That their roles are not clearly defined.
Clearly defined. I haven't, to be honestly speaking, I haven't looked at their provisions, and maybe they found 1 or 2 reasons why. I can't speak on that right now because I haven't. But of course, there's nothing like a perfect constitution. I know, unlike the 1997 constitution, we've had way more provisions. But at the same time, you will not go in any country and see all the provisions that people want included in the constitution. And that is why, if you look at section 7 of the 1997 constitution, it says, in addition to this constitution, other laws of the Gambia shall include this. So the constitution is like a supreme law. It sets the framework for other legislation and subsidiary legislation to complement the constitution, so long as they are not inconsistent. So some of the rights, I understand at some point, I think it was raised with regards to courts making special procedures in terms of during hearing for persons with disabilities. It's provided for in the 1997 constitution, but it's not provided for in the draft constitution. But at the same time, it sufficiently provides for the rights of every single person in the Gambia under the chapter on fundamental human rights as well. So, but I can't say we don't want this constitution. We want it, but at the same time, people need to understand that it cannot provide for everything. Sometimes it's the National Assembly that needs to make acts of the National Assembly or delegated legislations that can provide for some of these issues that are missing. We cannot have a constitution with 1,000 provisions trying to satisfy everyone.
Of course, that's what the CRC chairman said, that we cannot satisfy everybody. We will try as much as possible to include a lot into it.
Exactly.
And I think that's what has happened. Yeah. But again, you mentioned you are advocating for secularism to be added. But then, before, anyway, it wasn't there. But that didn't affect anyone, and we were not talking about it or fighting about it, because as far as people are concerned, it wasn't there. That didn't prevent people from freely practicing their religion, and it did not ignite any religious tensions. Why now? What's the point? When it wasn't there, we are all free to go to our mosques and churches. What's the point? What's the difference? What difference would it make then?
I think the debate, for me, it came as a surprise. I just woke up one day and there was a debate on secularism. Yeah. I didn't see the need for it. You understand? But then, like I said...
No, because you want it there.
I want it there.
It wasn't there before.
But context matters. Right? Context matters a lot. And if you read various papers on secularism, I think during that debate I've seen 4 or 5 different definitions.
Yes.
It is very subjective. But given our current context, it's very religious oriented. I think that was the reason why the debate was there. And for me, what they are fighting for, to solve that, is to include the word secular. But there was a backfire. Yes. You understand? I had that debate when it was going on, and I've had people say different things to me, things that were not really nice and are not pleasant. But that comes with the job. You understand? So for me, I always say context matters. And unfortunately, in our country, it's a different kind of force that has come up with this secularity, which is very difficult to handle because of the religious
it's sensitive.
It's
and when it is added, it will still go to a referendum.
When it's added, it will go through a referendum. But if it was, for me at this point, I think most of the people who were really against it will not vote. Just like the thing on term limits. People, there are so many things in the constitution, but people were just interested in term limits and secularism, when there were more important things to, in fact, to even look at and pay attention to. But our particular interest at that point were those 2 things, term limit and secularism. When we had 300 other provisions which we could have looked at.
Well, since the majority carries the vote, if it goes through a referendum, that means your purpose will be defeated.
If we have to go through the safe route, let's do that. And I think the CRC have done a good job in creating a fair balance.
Okay. But for me, I think also the debate around all this, like I said, is misinformation, lack of understanding, and people will just jump up and say certain things, and then others will follow without further doing studies and looking at things. Because like Maria said, everything is based also on context, and that's why I said earlier, if secular was anti-religion, then why are we having 2 major religious domination in Gambia going at each other based on that provision? So sometimes, you talk about majority carries the vote, yes, but the majority is not always right. But we, in constitutional making, we need to also think about how do we maintain and build the peace that exists. And I think for me, that's what the CRC tried to do to ensure that A and B would not, clash into something else. And like Maria said, I for me personally, of course, maybe I am speaking from a Muslim background, being a majority, thinking, having that majority, perspective. But at the end of the day, whether the word is there is not, for me, what is important is where is our relationship at as a people? How unified are we? What are our values? Do we understand all those issues? I think we need to start focusing on those kind of debates rather than debates that will divide this country. And for us, for me particularly, the secularism debate at some point was not even interesting, but one can understand why. It is also based on context. One group fear and another group fear. But at the end of the day, how do we balance these issues? I think that should have been the focus of the discussion. But I'm happy that the CRC and the draft constitution was able to settle that. But still, some people are not happy. And like Maria said, nobody will be happy. Not everybody will be happy. And for us political scientists, that's why we say sometimes that constitutional making processes are processes of compromise. You see something that you are happy with, somebody might not be happy with that. At least that's a compromise in that process. So nobody, whether majority or not everybody should win all the time.
Indeed.
As a counter-majoritarian rule.
Yes. Okay, Maria, we have 3 minutes to go. Your final words?
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to when the National Assembly will debate this draft, and I'm also looking forward to finally having this draft as the Constitution of the Gambia. And I can't wait for us to get rid of the 1997 Constitution, and I hope we do that at the right time. otherwise it would defeat the whole purpose.
Indeed, and Seth Martin.
Thank you, and I also want to thank IRI for partnering with the Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies to conduct this survey. For me, I think it is always important for us to engage the population and to understand what they are thinking so that we can use that in making policies that are representative and responsive to the needs of the public. And I think also as a country we have things that are very urgent, and we need to think collectively in ensuring that we address those issues, because whether Gambia have a new constitution or not, at the end of the day Gambia will still be here. But what kind of Gambia would that be? We need to start thinking about that. Is a Gambia that will be based on chaos, or Gambia that is different? So I think we need to be thinking about those issues to ensure that we continue to live in peace and harmony, and no politics or constitution should divide the population. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth Mati Jau, Center for Research and Policy Development, and thank you so much, Maria Sen, Law Hub Gambia. And to our viewers, thank you so much for following our programs, and this brings us to the end of this program. And until we come your way again, have a pleasant day.